I wasn't even planning to stay long. Just grab a coffee, maybe kill an hour pretending to read. That's how most evenings went lately, somewhere between avoiding my apartment and not knowing where else to be. The cafe wasn't busy. A soft hum of milk steaming, someone's laptop keys clicking. I slid into my usual corner seat. Same as last time, a voice said. I looked up. She was already at the counter, glancing back at me with that easy, practiced kind of smile. Julia. My friend Mark's mom. I hadn't seen her in months, not since a barbecue in their backyard where she'd made sure I had a plate before anyone else. Yeah, I said, trying not to sound like I'd been waiting for her to ask. Thanks. She knew my order, a small thing, but it stuck. When she came over to drop off the coffee, I noticed the way she tapped the rim of the cup twice before setting it down, like she always did. Studying? She asked. Trying to, I said, though my notebook was still closed. She sat at the next table over, not quite facing me, not quite away. Her coat was still buttoned, even though the place was warm. I kept catching myself glancing at her hands, how she kept her thumb hooked over the paper cup lid, not drinking, just holding. We talked about nothing for a while. Traffic on Route 19. How the cafe changed their mugs. Her laugh was soft, almost like she didn't want to disturb the room. At some point, she said, "You still hanging around with Mark?" Yeah. Not as much, though. Different schedules. College will do that, she murmured, eyes on the window. The silence after wasn't awkward, just there. Like both of us had decided to let it sit. My phone buzzed. A half-written text to someone I never sent messages to anymore still sat in my drafts. I flipped it face down. You look tired, she said. Not unkind, just noticing. I shrugged. Late nights. She gave a little nod, like she knew what I meant even though I wasn't sure I did. When she left, she touched my table lightly with her fingers, a gesture that didn't seem to have a reason. I watched her go, telling myself not to. I thought that would be the end of it, just another passing hello, another cup of coffee to cool too fast while I stared at the same page. But 20 minutes later, when I finally gathered my things, I saw I had a new message. It was from a number I didn't recognize at first, but the words stopped me cold. Don't call me that tonight. I just stood there in the doorway, the bell over the cafe jangling as someone came in behind me, and read it again. No name. No context. Just that line, like something already in motion, like I'd missed the first half of the conversation. I looked back out the window, and saw her car pulling away from the curb. I didn't answer the text. I told myself it might not even be her, though I knew it was. I didn't delete it either. It just sat there at the top of my screen, glowing every time I woke my phone. 2 nights later, I saw her again. Not at the cafe this time, but on the front porch of her house when I came by to drop off Mark's charger. He wasn't home. Forgotten delivery, she asked, opening the door just wide enough to let me in. Yeah. He left it in my car. The house was quiet. No TV, no music, just the soft ticking of a wall clock. She set a kettle on without asking, like it was automatic. Tea? Sure, I said, though I don't even like tea. We sat at the kitchen table, steam curling between us. She wore a loose sweater, sleeves pushed up, no makeup this time. I noticed a thin gold ring on the counter, not on her hand. You still in school? She asked. Yeah. Last semester. That's good. Finish while you can. She gave a small smile that didn't quite hold. I dropped out my second year. Met his dad. Thought I knew what I was doing. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded, turning my cup in slow circles. She noticed. I'm not complaining. Just funny how you think life's going to line up one way, and it never does. I wanted to ask if she was lonely. I didn't. Instead I said, I get that. Do you? Her eyes lingered on me a beat too long. The kettle clicked off, even though we weren't drinking anymore. Something shifted in the silence. The air felt heavy, like a door cracked open somewhere inside the room. She reached across suddenly, brushing a bit of tea bag string off my sleeve. You always show up like this, she said lightly. Like what? Quiet. Like you're waiting for someone to tell you what to do. I laughed under my breath, but it wasn't funny. Maybe. Her hand stayed just a second longer than necessary before pulling back. I thought about that text again. The way she'd said, "Don't call me that tonight," like she was telling herself as much as me. Julia, I started, not sure where I was going with it. Don't. She shook her head gently, eyes on the counter. It's late. You should go. But when I stood, she handed me the charger with her fingers grazing mine, soft, deliberate, like a pause you weren't supposed to notice. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Except it did. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. I'd stopped by Mark's place to pick him up for a late movie. He wasn't ready, still in the shower, so I ended up waiting in the living room while Julia folded laundry on the couch. Want to help? She asked, holding up a towel. Sure. I sat across from her, awkwardly trying to match the way she folded. We didn't talk much. Just the quiet sound of fabric being stacked and that faint lavender detergent smell. She corrected the way I folded one, her hands brushing mine for a split second longer than necessary. Mark came in, damp hair, laughing at something on his phone. You too good? Yeah, I said too quickly. Julia didn't look up. On the way out, I caught her eyes. Just a second, but it felt like she was warning me, or maybe warning herself. A week passed. No messages. I told myself it was nothing. Just coincidence. Just me imagining things. Then, late one night, I ran into her again, this time on the stairs of her apartment building. I was coming up, she was carrying groceries down. One bag tore slightly, oranges rolling. Here, I caught one before it hit the landing. Thanks, she said, out of breath. Elevators out. Figures. I carried the bags back up with her. In her kitchen, she set things down slowly, almost as if delaying the moment I'd leave. Do you always show up when I need an extra hand? She asked. Guess I'm lucky. Silence. Not uncomfortable. Just thick. I noticed how her hair was loose this time, falling into her eyes when she leaned over the counter. I was gonna make tea, she said. Want some? I almost said no, I should've, but I stayed. We stood shoulder to shoulder, waiting for the kettle. Too close. Close enough that I could see the fine lines at the corner of her mouth, the way her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter like she was keeping herself still. You've been quiet, I said. Busy. She didn't look at me. Too busy to text? I shouldn't have said it. Her eyes flicked up sharply, searching my face, then softened. It's not a good idea, she murmured. I swallowed. What isn't? Before she could answer, footsteps echoed in the hall. A neighbor passing. Julia stepped back like she'd been caught, though no one had looked in. Mark said you're thinking of moving after graduation, she said suddenly, changing the subject. Maybe. Haven't decided. The kettle whistled. Neither of us moved to take it off. She turned to me, finally meeting my eyes, and for a heartbeat I thought she might close the distance. Her hand half lifted like she meant to touch my arm, then dropped. I should go, I said, though I didn't move. Yeah. Her voice was quiet, almost steady. But as I left, I felt her gaze stay on me long after the door clicked shut. It was raining. Not heavy, just that thin drizzle that makes everything smell like pavement and leaves. I'd finished class late, cutting through the park on my way to the bus, when I saw her sitting on a bench under the half-dead oak near the path. No umbrella. Just staring out at nothing. You'll get soaked, I said, stepping under the branches. She didn't startle. Just glanced at me and smiled like she'd been expecting me. Guess I forgot how to care. I sat, trying to keep a polite distance that felt impossible. Water ran off her sleeve, dripping steadily onto the ground between us. You okay? I asked. Long day. She looked past me, as if answering something else entirely. Mark's thinking of moving out. Says I hover too much. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just listened. You're good at that, she said softly. Just sitting. Not trying to fix things. I shrugged, tracing a bead of water down my knee with my finger. Maybe I'm just bad at advice. She laughed, short, almost sharp, then stopped. You're not bad at anything. That's the problem. That landed heavier than it should have. We sat there with the sound of the drizzle and a car passing in the distance. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I already knew. I shouldn't be here, she murmured, half to herself. I keep waiting to feel like the adult in the room. I looked at her then, really looked, wet hair clinging to her cheek, her hands clenched in her lap like she was holding herself together. You are, I said. You're the one telling me to be careful. Doesn't feel that way, she whispered. I almost reached for her hand. Stopped myself. She noticed. Of course she noticed. This is stupid, she said finally, voice low. You're Mark's friend. I'm old enough to know better. Old enough, I said, doesn't mean untouchable. Her breath caught, just barely. Like a door creaking open. Don't, she said, but it wasn't firm. It sounded like she was warning herself. I'm not, I started, then stopped. Words felt too loud for the rain. We sat there, neither moving, everything unsaid pressing against the air between us. You'll graduate soon, she said finally. You'll move on. And she didn't finish. What if I don't want to move on? I said. It slipped out before I could stop it. Her eyes found mine, searching, steady, like she was memorizing something. A slow breath. A tremor in her fingers as she brushed rain off her knee. Don't do that, she said quietly. Do what? Make me believe you mean it. The words hung there. The park felt too still, the world holding its breath. I shifted closer, just an inch. Close enough to see the pulse at her throat, the way her lips parted as if she might say my name or stop me. And then the rain came harder, sudden, cold, forcing us up, breaking the moment before either of us could decide what it meant. I didn't see her for 2 weeks. No texts, no chance meetings, not even a wave from her car passing by. I told myself it didn't matter. Buried myself in finals, extra shifts, nights out with people I barely liked. But every quiet moment turned into an echo of that bench, the rain, her voice saying, "Don't make me believe you mean it." When I finally saw her, it wasn't at the cafe or her porch. It was at the grocery store, in line behind her while she loaded the belt with fruit and bottled water. She didn't see me right away. She looked tired. A different kind of tired, like she'd been up too late thinking about something she didn't want to think about. Hey, I said, casual as I could manage. She glanced back, startled, then smiled, too fast, too practiced. Hi. You back from break? I never left, I said. Oh. She turned back to the cashier, fingers tight on her wallet. That was it. No small talk. No how have you been? Just a polite nod before she walked off with her bags. I stood there with a half-empty basket, feeling like I'd misread everything. Later that week, Mark mentioned something in passing. Mom's been talking to Dad again. Weird, right? After all these years. I didn't ask questions. Didn't have to. My chest felt hollow. One night I walked by her building on purpose. Lights off in her window. I almost buzzed up. Almost. The next day I skipped my usual coffee stop. Skipped walking the long way past her street. Told myself I was done chasing something I couldn't name. And yet, midnight, my phone lit up. A message from her number. Not words. Just a photo. A mug of tea on her kitchen table. Steam rising, faint reflection of her hand near the rim. Nothing else. No explanation. I stared at it for an hour, typing replies I never sent. You okay? Want me to come by? Did you mean to send this? All deleted. The next evening, I walked to the cafe out of habit. The place was crowded, warm light spilling over the tables. Our usual corner was empty. I waited, sipping bitter coffee, telling myself it wasn't for her. 10 minutes. 20. 45. She never came. I left my cup half full, napkin folded and refolded until it tore. On the way out, I almost texted her. Almost knocked on her door. Almost did a dozen stupid things. Instead, I walked home under the streetlights, phone heavy in my pocket, with one unsent message glowing on the screen. Where are you? I didn't plan on seeing her that night. I'd been walking home late, cold air biting, when I noticed her porch light still on. It was almost midnight. I stood at the bottom of the steps too long, debating whether to knock. Before I decided, the door opened. She stepped out, sweater draped around her shoulders like she'd been expecting someone or no one at all. You're out late, she said, voice low, eyes tired but clear. Could say the same. She didn't invite me in. I didn't ask. We just stood there, quiet street humming with distant traffic, porch light buzzing faintly. You sent me a picture, I said finally. Tea on the table. I know. She didn't deny it. Didn't explain. Why? She looked down, twisting the edge of her sleeve. Because I wanted you to know I was thinking about you. And because I wanted to remind myself not to. The words hit harder than I expected. I stepped closer, just enough to feel the edge of her breath in the cold. Julia, my voice cracked a little. I don't know what you want me to do. Her laugh was small, almost sad. Neither do I. That's the problem. For a long moment, we didn't speak. My hands itched to reach for hers. I could feel her doing the same, like two people holding opposite sides of an invisible rope. I'm scared, she said finally. Not looking at me. Not of you. Of what I'll let myself become if I'm not careful. You think I'm not? My words came out sharper than I meant. You think I haven't been trying to stay away? Her eyes met mine then, steady, searching. So why are you here? I swallowed. Because I didn't want you to think I didn't care. The silence after that felt different. Not heavy. Just full, like everything we hadn't said was right there between us, waiting. She stepped down one stair, close enough that I could see rain still clinging to her hair from earlier. Close enough that I'd only have to lean in an inch to erase the space. I can't be Julia, Mark's mom, and whatever this is. Not tonight. Not ever, she whispered. But I also can't pretend I don't, she trailed off, shaking her head, not finishing. Then don't pretend, I said softly. Her hand lifted, not to touch me, but to hover just shy of it, trembling. For a second I thought she might close the gap. Instead, she let it fall, brushing her fingers against mine as she passed me the folded edge of her sleeve. A gesture so small, but it felt like everything. Okay, she murmured, voice almost steady. Okay, I whispered back. We stood there a second longer, the porch light buzzing, the world holding its breath, then she slipped inside and closed the door gently, leaving the night perfectly still. Spring came slow that year. Exams, moving boxes, and all the small goodbyes that happen when you're 20-something and restless. I told everyone I was staying in the city for work, which was true. I just didn't mention that I'd found a little upstairs place on the edge of town, 10 minutes from a porch light I knew by heart. We didn't jump back into anything. No big conversations. Just small routines finding their way back. Sometimes I'd see her on that same park bench, early mornings when the drizzle hung in the air. She'd have her thermos of tea. I'd stop with my black coffee. We didn't talk about the winter, about rain-soaked confessions or unsent messages. We just sat, watching the path wake up with runners and dogs. One morning, 8:47 a.m. exactly, I noticed because my phone buzzed with a meeting reminder, she handed me half a sandwich from her bag. No words, just a smile. That felt louder than anything we could have said. Months passed. I finished school, started the job. Mark moved out, busy with his own life. The house felt different without him, but Julia didn't seem as guarded anymore. I'd stop by after work to help fix a dripping tap or carry groceries. She'd make tea. I'd drink it, even though I still didn't like tea. It wasn't dramatic. No one made a move. One night I just stayed a little longer in her kitchen, laughing at nothing, and she didn't tell me I should go. I stayed again. And again. Little things changed. She stopped wearing that careful smile like armor. I stopped overthinking every silence. Life didn't turn perfect. Work was still tiring. She still had days when she'd retreat into herself. But there was warmth now, steady and quiet, like light under a door. Last week, I met her at that same bench. We hadn't planned it, but I knew she'd be there. "You're late," she said softly as I sat down, handing me a mug of black coffee this time, not tea. "You remembered," I said. Of course I did. We sat without rushing. No need to fill the space. The drizzle came and went, same as always. I thought about that night on the porch, how close we'd been to breaking something fragile. And now here we were, not broken, not rushing, just real. She glanced at me sideways, a quiet look that said more than any declaration ever could. "Okay," she murmured. "Yeah," I said, and meant it. The clock on my phone read 8:47 again. Funny how time loops back when you're paying attention. I didn't need to say I loved her. She didn't need to ask. It was there, in the way she pushed her thermos toward me, in the way my hand brushed hers without either of us moving away.